Hey gang, Bryant, restaurant consultant, author, chef, and restaurateur, back with another exciting installation on all things food cost. Today, we are diving in to the big issues that happen when it comes to controlling food cost. Now, if you tuned in to some previous videos, you would see where we're going in the sequence of this. We started off with food cost, our beginner's formula, to create a nice level set and understand the concept of food cost. Next, we went to food cost, the mastery formula. And in that mastery formula, we counted out all of the big issues relative to how we account for food, which make up the biggest impact on food, and definitely it makes up the biggest inconsistency with what our food cost is from month to month. After we get that controlled, we're still going to have some pretty substantial elements within the mechanical or operations level delivery on execution. So, talking about execution, we are going to dive into the 10 things killing your food cost and how to fix them. So, top 10 list really quick. We'll go through what the items are, we'll talk about what they mean, and then we are going to dive into each one of them uniquely to talk about how to fix them with what we're seeing out there today as some of the most innovative and creative responses to control, management, leadership, and measurement. So, starting off, the number one big killer when it comes to food cost is, no surprise, portion control. Portion control is one of those things that's mismanaged. It's one of those things that's also widely understood. We're going to talk about some incredible solutions for impacting portion control. Next, yield adjustments or the lack of yield adjustments. What a yield adjustment is, real simple. I'll give you an illustration. Let's say that I have a box of iceberg lettuce. It weighs 40 pounds. Let's say with that box of lettuce that after I core it, take off the outer wrapper leaves, and weigh it, I only get 36 pounds. So I lost 10% of my total yield, which would be great, by the way. So I would have to take that 36 pounds and divide that total finished weight by how much I paid for a case. That is going to give me my usable portion amount and my usable portion price. Without it, it can skew things pretty dramatically. And there's some really cool tips and tricks in how to account for that and fix it. Next, let's talk about service mistakes. Front of the house turnover is higher throughout the industry than back of the house, and therefore we're training more and maybe even sometimes playing catch up and not training as well. So it's probably no surprise that number 3 is service errors or service mistakes. But coming up right on its heels are back of the house or kitchen mistakes. We'll talk about the most common mistakes and how to remedy them. Next, sales not being rang in, intentionally or otherwise. Also, we have purchasing errors and recovery, or what we call retail recovery. If for any number of reasons we either didn't order the right amount of product, we were busier than we thought, or we missed something when we were counting, or didn't get heard from our distributor, and the only way to recover is to run to the grocery store and buy something, or the cost store, the club store. We are going to pay more money when we do that, or we may get a different yield. A whole number of things can happen that can end up inflating food cost because of this situation. So we'll talk about how to avoid that. Next, accounting errors. So in the mastery formula, there was a big accounting construct that was explained, understanding a high level of how the whole food cost machine works, and with the knowledge that you get from it, how you can impact it better and with a lot of precision and accuracy. Even still, there's a number of reoccurring accounting issues that happen in spite of the best construct. So we'll cover that. Next, waste and production errors. And these ones will probably surprise you, but some really cool solutions for them. Coming in at number 9, shrink. Now, shrink is a whole number of different things. Things that walked away with no accountability. Could be theft, could be waste, could be oversight, could be a number of things. And it could have happened from a number of different people or influences around us. And finally, we have, rounding out the top 10, our inventory accuracy challenges and how to fix those. So let's dive right in by talking about portion control. If you joined us for the mastery formula. This will be a review, but really quick, we want to talk about the concept of ideal cost versus actual cost, because this is where the majority of variance occurs. And this is how it applies to portion control. We have a recipe. That recipe states that we should use X amount of ounces to build this particular menu item. That's ideal cost. We know how much it cost us to put it on the plate, how much of it we should have used, how much we sell it for, so we should absolutely be able to figure out what our food cost is on that particular plate. However, once it's interpreted by somebody and executed by the individual, what we end up producing is an actual cost. So actual cost is what we actually spent on product that went on the plate versus how much we sold it for. That difference between the two is variance, and that variance is impacted by portion control. So let's talk about portion control in this illustration. Let's say I have French fries. The portion for my French fries that's supposed to go on every single plate is 7 ounces. My ideal cost is 9 cents an ounce times the 7 ounces gives me 64 cents per ounce. The challenge is my guys are doing that by hand. So my guys are constantly over portioning it because they're putting a bigger handful on the plate. They're not weighing it. I don't know that that would necessarily be practical anyway, but because of it, we go from 7 ounces at 9 cents an ounce to 10 ounces now. That's how much we're over portioning. And the way that we figure this out is we added up all of the items that we sold with fries on it, and we multiplied that total by 7 ounces for each plate, and we came up with what our ideal usage of French fries should have been. Then we took how much inventory we used to sell against it and how much we had left, what our total purchases were, how much we had left. So let's say I bought 10 cases of French fries to sell all of these plates with fries on them. And let's say I had 3 cases left over. According to the weight in the case and the 7 ounces on a plate multiplied by all the plates with fries, my ideal cost says I should have had 4 cases of fries left over. So this is how we figure out the difference between ideal and actual. But we can also notice with our eye that, hey, that's not 7 ounces. However you get there, identifying how to control it is what's most important. In this illustration, you can see that we spent a substantial more amount of money by overportioning, 90 cents versus 64 cents. So we really took almost a 50% increase in our food cost to execute this item. That's troubling. So let's talk about how to fix it. The concept, and trust me, I've seen some really bad fixes. I've seen people who could rationalize hiring a prep person using a 2-cent plastic bag and then adding about 3 hours of labor to weighing it and portioning it and putting it in a bag. When we add up the soft cost, the labor, the plastic bag, the cost to make this whole French fry, that was way more expensive than overportioning it by 10 cents an ounce. So that wasn't necessarily a good solution. Best solution that I've seen is a test of muscle memory. Very, very cool concept. All of our hands are a little different. All of our interpretation is a little different. That's fine. We can remedy that by taking a scale. And we take a little paper pulp food boat and we put that on the line. We tear out the scale, which means we put the boat on it, zero it out. Now anything that goes into it is how much the product weighs. So when a plate gets made, we grab the guy's attention and say, hey, bring that plate over here real quick, scrape it off. How many ounces do we see? 10. Okay, let's put it back on, sell it, less than 3 ounces. And now at the end of the shift, I'm gonna grab all the guys in the kitchen and I'm gonna do a little test with them. Hey, here's the boat, here's the scale, let's tear it out, and here's a basket of French fries. I would like each one of you to put 7 ounces of French fries on the plate. The guy who gets closest the first time is gonna get a $5 Starbucks gift card. And we do, and we see what the results are, and we capture and record the results. And we want to do it 3 times to make sure that there's consistency. Consistency getting it correct. After each person gets it within a half an ounce variance 3 times, they're excused, great job, maybe we give them another incentive. For the rest of the guys, we're going to have them continue to repeat this until they get it right. They are going to start training their muscle memory, their hand hand-eye coordination. Their brain is going to remember what point of close and how filled and what that feels like in their hand. So we do the exercise, and it's pretty engaging. Guys tend to have quite a bit of fun. Now, in order to ensure that muscle memory sticks, we pop onto the line every so often and say, pop quiz, first guy to get it gets a $1 scratch card, show me 7 ounces. And so we just test and we keep testing. And this concept in restauranting that's called, you can expect what you inspect. So if you put a system into place, you obviously have to keep it going. You have to inspect it if you're going to expect it. So hopefully that got your head wrapped around muscle memory. This works for 3 really big control items. We use it on salad, we use it on French fries, we use it on shredded cheese, especially shredded cheese. That's an expensive commodity. None of them are cheap. None of them, certainly, do we want to create the inconsistency in the guest's mind where now they start thinking negatively because we've scaled back our portions but left the price the same. It was never intentional. That was never anything that we set out to do. It was a byproduct of what happened before we had some portion control and muscle memory and what happened after. So getting in front of it, sometimes you can take a little heat, but you got to be prepared to do that for the long haul. Next, let's talk about yields. So yielding has an equation. We talked about the equation, but now we've got it in writing, so it's real. We have our beginning case weight. We subtract out what our unusable case weight was, and then we take our finished weight or our yield total. And that is the total amount of weight that we're going to divide into the case price to figure out what our per portion cost is. So let me give you an example. I've got a number 10 can, a Bryant of sliced jalapenos. The can itself whole weighs 104 ounces. Inside of it, there is 102 ounces of usable product or product with juice. That would cost me 0.56 cents an ounce at a portionable cost, but I don't use the juice. So even if I use the juice to rest it in, I'm not serving the juice and charging for the juice. So I'm going to drain the juice and figure out what my drain weight is. In this example, after I took all the juice out and then just weighed the jalapenos in their raw form, I only had 72 ounces of usable product. So that jumped my price from 0.056 cents an ounce, or a nickel an ounce, up to over 8 cents an ounce. That's a pretty big swing, a 40% increase in what my usable price on the plate is. I'd better account for that. And this is one of those exercises. Print off your entire order guide, go through every single item and identify, highlight what has a drain weight, and pick a couple of items a day to just break down, rationalize. Just one small extra step before you begin breaking down the product is just start with its beginning weight, prep the product, clean the product, trim the product like you normally would, take its finished weight, and then weigh that. Use that as your indicator. You can use a pretty good baseline. For the most part, things will tend to finish the same over and over and over again. There are commodity items that will change throughout the year. Lettuce is one of those ones to be aware of. Lettuce is an item that we tend to index at least twice a year. During the fall, when the quality starts taking on more weight and we end up getting more rust and rot and more loss, we have a different index for yield on head lettuce, for example, than we do in the spring and in the fall. Next, or excuse me, in the spring and in the summer. Next, another example would be if you're buying any type of subprimal, let's say a New York strip, a tenderloin, every animal's a little bit different. The yield is going to be a little bit different, so we'll try to do a controlled environment, take 5 cases at one time, break them down, clean them, figure out what their yield is, and then use that as the derivative for each case, the yield percentage average of the 5. So hopefully that clears up some concepts and gives you some ideas on yielding. Now let's talk about accountability. No ticket. No ticket means no order. When items are rang in, they're accounted for, and even if they have to get voided or comped, we can adjust that. What I can't account for is if there was a mistake made and somebody wants something on the fly, and I'll ring you up a ticket, or so-and-so said just to make it for me. That never flies. Accountability all the way. Otherwise, it's the person who made its fault. That's where it's always going to come back, is to the kitchen. So we don't want to make those guys responsible for something they're not. No ticket, no order. Waste and shrink. Okay. When we were talking about yields, we were talking about prepping the product. Well, we do a prep audit, not just for yield's sake, but for everything's sake. If you feel like yields are off, or when food cost is getting out of control and we can't identify where or why, but we can identify the usage of some product has gone up, or it's not performing according to how we thought we should sell it, we will do a prep audit. So we remove the garbage cans and we put one of these clear Lexan tubs in the prep station. And we tell the guys, everything that you prep, I want all of the trim, all of the waste to go in this bucket. We don't even have to say why. What they realize is that we are aware, and awareness creates change. And what's fascinating, especially if you have more than one prep station, you walk down the line and you look at the buckets, you can dig into them, inspect them. Were they cutting too much off at the top of the onion? Were they peeling too many good layers of romaine or iceberg? Were they really fast with the knife when they were trimming the fish or the steak? We can see that, and they know that we're seeing it. When you walk back there and look at it, they'll also look at it. What's really fascinating is when you have multiple stations, we even see guys looking at their bucket unsolicited and looking at the next guy's bucket. And so it creates this healthy competition because there's awareness. Hey, look at what my yield was. I did so great today. That is the type of reinforced behavior we want to applaud people for. And this is a great solution to being able to mitigate where we would have some reckless loss because we're in a hurry or for a number of other reasons. We might find out that we still have bad yields, but then it becomes a coachable moment. We know where it came from, and we have to figure out the why. The why could be because our prep schedules weren't very good, they weren't forecasted right, and so we're making things on the fly. But I would otherwise not know that if I couldn't identify where it was coming from in the first place. Okay, accounting for inventory. This is one of those big challenges, and that's because sometimes the way we count inventory is kind of ambiguous. It's kind of hard. When I walk into the walk-in or dry storage, I see full cases or portion of cases, or I see prepped product in a full bin and I know how much that full bin is worth. Easy to count. One of the hard places to count is the line. I've got my make station, it's got all this product in it, and it doesn't seem real feasible to tear out the weight of a sixth pan or a ninth pan or a half pan or a third pan and figure out what the zero is on that, then put the item on there, then figure out what its weight is. That's very cumbersome, and I get it. So we have this incredible hack that we use. At the end of the shift, regardless of what shift in my restaurants, the closing side work is to fill up every single station, period. Do your rotation, do your marrying, and fill up every single item. So one time, we will make a recipe. We will tear out what each one of the pans weighs down to zero, and we'll fill one up completely full of product, and then we will add a price to that product, and we make a recipe. One full ninth pan of diced eggs equals 26 ounces. One whole pan of shredded cheddar equals 80 ounces. Whatever it happens to be, we account for that entire recipe of the line, how much every single product is when it's full, how much it weighs, how much it costs, and then we come up with a bottom line total for what is a one count of a full make line. With that, all we have to do is ensure that before our guys take inventory that the table was completely full, and if it was, they put down a 1, and that 1 has its total price. A really, really cool hack for managing the tedious part or the most inaccurate part of inventory counts. So here's the real quick formula, and let's move on to security. So shrink can happen a number of different ways. We've seen everything from vendors to employees, either directly or indirectly taking product. And believe me, there was some indirect stuff that has been taken. It kind of baffled me. It's not about really the negative part of this conversation. It's about omitting the ability for it to happen. And I can't tell you that it's going to completely close it off, but we've seen a handful of really, really great solutions to this. Number one is we don't allow the back door to stay unlocked and opened. And that is because that is the place where majority of product leaves our restaurant without accountability. So we're going to make sure that the door is locked, and the only way that somebody's going to be able to get out and take a garbage run or get to the back is with the manager. Now, if the manager escorts them to the door, hopefully even helps them to throw out the garbage or take out the linen or do whatever it is they have to do outside, it's controlled. If we have to unlock it for a vendor to come in, we lock it after they're in, and then we unlock it to let them out. We're controlling, literally, the environment. I can't tell you how many crazy things I have seen. Steaks buried underneath the bottom of a linen bag. Actually, take it a step further. I've had garbage cans that were filled up with full cases of beer so that after a shift, people come grab stuff. I've literally caught a vendor one time smuggling out a bottle of booze. The craziest stuff can happen. We want to control it. So that would lead me to security. Beyond cameras, beyond locks on the door, we also put locks on our bins. So our outside bin where we can put recycling and trash and linen, we keep a lock on the door. We also keep a lock on the lids and close them. Yes, we do have to control and have a little bit of energy and effort and labor spent by somebody accompanying somebody, but it's accountability, and it really helps alleviate the opportunity for unnecessary shrink or theft. Next, let's talk about the waste, spoilage, sometimes overportioning. We can hit a whole bunch of birds with this one stone, and this is one of my favorite concepts, something that I love so much. It sounds really jacked up, but I love the concept of a trash audit. So when I was young, when I owned my first restaurant, I had constantly been working with this one employee who was always late, and I was really frustrated, but she was really, really strong, and I didn't want to fire her, and I was young, and I don't know that I was quite at the point where I could afford to get rid of her, so I had to come up with these creative punishments. So one time, half an hour late, I was fuming, and I said, okay, after your shift, we're going to do a trash audit together, and she was like, what the heck is a trash audit? Well, we take a big tarp, and we put on a vinyl dishwashing apron and some gloves, and we pour the garbage can that was by the dish station out on the tarp so that we could investigate what was in it. Assuming I was going to find silverware and little stainless steel ramekins, we did find a little bit of that, a couple of broken coffee plates and some glassware, but what really stood out was the sea of yellow inside of the garbage can, and that happened to be French fries. And this was when I'd had this first big epiphany about the whole muscle memory concept, because I had identified one of two things was happening here. Either we were overportioning our French fries because there was so much waste in the garbage can, or our guests don't like the product. Either way, this was definitely something I needed to be aware of. So we did some time tests. Initially, we did some portion tests because I thought that was the issue, but it turns out it wasn't portion. It was a quality issue. We made the fries from scratch, and they were shoestring, great little fries. The problem was they didn't stay hot very long, and by the time they had gotten out, our guests would eat their entree first, fries later, or back and forth, whatever it was. The fries just weren't getting eaten because the quality wasn't as good as it should have been. It was getting cold too fast, so we changed French fries, and we ended up mitigating that issue. But I have found so many fascinating, interesting things by doing trash audits. I can find where stuff is over-prepped. I can find where stuff was spoiled or poured out, thrown out, and I can trace it back. Was it because of a dating issue? Was it because we didn't manage our prep list appropriately? We didn't have good indicators for exactly how much we should be making. A lot of information comes to light through a trash audit, and it is a really cool awareness exercise. It may not sound like fun, but I think if you roll your sleeves up, you'll find out that it actually is pretty cool, because the investigating part is neat. You're a detective, and you're finding clues, and those clues tell a very interesting story. All right, next, let's move on to inventory. This impacts inventory counting. It also impacts that retail recovery piece, and it all boils down to being able to take an accurate inventory. Now, there are very, very intelligent systems out there, software systems that will help you to manage inventory counts and ordering well, but there's also some very rudimentary hacks out there. One of the biggest, one of the easiest, and one of the least expensive is to just get some shelf labels and put a label where every single piece of product is supposed to go. Now, when either I go to take inventory or when I go to place an order, I'm not missing something because it's not there. It's easy to replenish the things that we recognize we're low on, but sometimes we miss the things that we're completely out of. It also creates good continuity because the same thing should continually go in the same spot. All right, next, let's talk about some of the advantages of this sheet to shelf concept. If everything is where it's supposed to be, and I can predict that, then it makes my counting easier because I know my list is been rearranged to match the exact same order of my walk-in, of my dry storage, of my line. Everything is where it's supposed to be because it's labeled. And if it's not, then I'm out of it and I don't count for it. So it gives me the opportunity to count faster, more accurately, and with more organization. It also minimizes my order errors and prevents all that retail recovery. Now let's move on to recipe rationalization. This is one of those really dynamic concepts. So a couple of quick tips and tricks to help manage variance. A little bit of food for thought for you. This is more dynamic because this requires some math and definitely some discovery skills. So we are focusing right now on the biggest relationship that exists in your restaurant, and that is a relationship between you and your guest. If I was your guest, this relationship would be between me and you. And what's at the root of me and you? The menu. Managing our menu intelligently to be able to generate profit requires some analytics. And from these analytics, there are a whole number of issues born from it. The first and one of the worst food mistakes for food costs that people can make is when it comes to the pricing logic. Forget the idea that your food cost should be X percentage. That is a silly notion because if we're shooting for, let's say 28%, we should have 28% food cost, that's great. But you can't build every single plate and then make sure that whatever the price is reflects a 28% cost. You would be leaving a lot of money on the table. I had an illustration where we looked at a burger, a four item concept. We had a burger, French fries, a dessert, and a beer. I could not be competitive if I were to mark that beer or even a soda up to a 32% food cost. I could not be competitive if I did the same with my French fries. If I had to have a 28% cost on my burger, I'd have to inflate that price. I'd be out of market condition or market expectation because I'd be charging too much for something that's called a fair market value item. A guest knows what the range of a burger should be relative to its price and its quality. So if mine is like somebody else's, but I'm charging more to hit this food cost number, that's kind of flawed. So let's talk about solving for this pricing puzzle. There's a handful of things that will command higher price. Number one is originality. If we can remove the concept of fair market value because we deliver the item differently than anybody else, I have no base of comparison. So because it's unique, I'm going to have to pay more for it. And that's the basic rule of supply and demand. Next is presentation. The more elegantly designed or creative or unique the presentation, the more its interpreted value becomes higher. If I go to a very nice restaurant and I get a chilled fork and I get a chilled ramekin that's ice cold with my dressing in it, that's going to impress a different value to me for what that salad is worth than if I get a regular salad on a 10-inch wide rim bowl that's 2.5 inches deep with a plastic ramekin of dressing on the side. See the difference. Next, competition. Competition is going to dictate where your food cost can lie and maybe in some cases if you should make the item and sell the item or not. If you have a very aggressive competitor that's in the burger space and you're in the burger space and they just happen to have 100 locations and they're buying on volume and discounting to bring in volume, right? Everybody's going to run the same food cost, but they can make exceptions because volume will hide a lot of sins. So if they can outperform you in volume, they can run on a thinner margin, thus have a higher food cost and get away with it. You may not be able to. So you have to identify what's your competition in the market, what are they selling, and where is their price point at, and how can I achieve that? Outside of the supply and demand equation, we also have the value delta, and that's kind of what some of this is leading up to. The value delta is an important thing to understand because it doesn't just take price and quality. For the previous two generations before millennials, the value equation was where the intersecting lines met when it came to quality and price. That was how we derived value. There was no real formula for it. Consumers just seemed to know that. However, with a more experiential generation that is more constantly stimulated, more constantly comparing experiences and sharing those, it has changed the entire value equation from an intersecting line to a delta. And in this delta, now there's three elements that impact the way people perceive the value. And that is quality, price, and experience. And so there's a lot of elements within experience that can make or break the value equation. Originality is certainly one of them. People are looking for unique experiences. Presentation, especially if they're unique or creative, that is also part of the experience. So we've got to keep some of this in mind when it comes to being able to impact that pricing puzzle. And we've got to think outside of the box when it comes to just putting a blanket food cost percentage as a standard. We talked in Food Cost Mastery about ideal blended food cost, knowing that there's a yin to the yang. If I need to sell the burger because that's kind of the platform for our business, but I know I'm going to have to suffer a higher food cost because this item is familiar and a lot of my competitors have it, then I have to figure out what do they not have that would complement this item and hopefully even pull some pressure off it on the menu. My ground pork, my smoked ground pork bacon burger is a very, very relatively inexpensive and more consistent commodity item for me to make, and it's very unique, and I can sell that burger and make a higher level of gross profit than I can on the burger. It offsets it. So I have to find complement throughout my categories to offset some of my burdens. And I can't just get rid of the burger. So how do we manage it? Okay, less is more. This is a very, very challenging concept for a lot of places, and that's why I have the illustration of this world famous product up here, In-N-Out Burger. I tell clients all the time, this is not my opinion, it's not subjective. We have data, we have facts that show that a consumer's interest or a consumer's belief in your ability to execute an item really well starts to dissipate after 46 items on the menu. If you've got more than 46 items, they don't believe you are any longer a specialist, you're now a generalist. A generalist does not command the same money as a specialist. So we have to consider the ergonomics for the size of our menu. This concept that we teach in culinary school, when I teach culinary classes, one of the first and most important things that I tell people is follow this rule and be conscious of it at all times. Just because you can does not mean you should. Be very intentional about what you offer. Think about how that's going to impact your purchasing. Is it going to require you to have a ton of inventory? If you have a ton of inventory, for a lot of items on a menu, you're going to have to buy smaller sizes because you're not going to move the same volume if you have many more items and you're not cross-using the ingredients, which all of this, again, hurting the perceived value, can ultimately hurt the quality of your product. If you're buying smaller cases, that's going to hurt the value of how much you buy it for. You're going to pay more for a smaller case than you are a bigger case. So if you're trying to shirk that rule and buy a bigger case, now you're getting close to the potential of compromising the shelf life or the integrity of the product, taking it maybe too far, which could impact quality. Also, your inventory dollars on hand, how much you're going to always have to have on hand to be able to fulfill a big menu versus a small menu is going to have a big implication. And value, this is an interesting part about me and you, the menu. Value is seen as what your offering is in categories, not in total quantity. So if I had 40 items on the menu, but I only had 4 categories, a consumer would see more value if those same 40 items were broken into 6 or 7 categories. More categories gives me the interpretation of more value, because when people read the menu, they skim the menu and they're starting at a high level, and where they get interest, they will ratchet down. So more categories, more high level for me to look at, and then I can drill down into the category that interests me. That makes me feel as a consumer like this place offers more than most people. So you can see the index, call it between 45 and 50 items. That's kind of the breaking point where you move from specialist to generalist. And if you're selling a commodity, you're relegating yourself into a pricing war. If you're selling a specialty and nobody else does it, you command more money. Finally, let's talk about frequency of changing the menu. The menu does not have to be changed every week, depending on your concept. I won't tell you how many times it doesn't have to be changed, but I will tell you, you should consider changing the menu at least twice a year. When we look at the commodities index and we look at the way that consumers eat and behave, we can identify that people tend to eat heavier during the colder months and they eat lighter during the warmer months. Well, the same thing is kind of true with the way the commodity lines work, which is convenient. Proteins, stewed meats, that type of stuff becomes less expensive as the middle meats or the subprimals like your New York and your strip or your ribeye, your tenderloin. Those things tend to go up when it gets colder. We're getting close to holiday seasons, but your short ribs, braised meats, that type of stuff tends to either go down or have stayed the same, so I can manage that. Same is true if I have the 6 salads on my menu. During the spring and summertime, that's great. During the winter and fall, people eat less salads. So me offering 6 salads requires me to have more product, and it requires me to buy product that has a shorter shelf life. The quality is not as good during the colder months. It doesn't have all the elements of sunshine and rain and the perfect growing environment that it does in the spring and fall. So at a bare minimum, we should try to at least shift according to those 2 standards of the way people consume and the way that product performs. And when we do a menu change, we don't have to change everything. Just a little bit of a layout, some formatting. There's a handful of different things. I'm going to defer to one of my best-selling books, which is called On the Menu. This is over 101 rules for menu engineering, development, design, and it has an incredible chapter on how the best in the industry change menus, increase prices, and do it without getting any backlash. You can get it on Amazon.com. You check out Ronald Bryant, and you will find it there. On the Menu is the name of it. So we will address some relatively high-level menu management concepts really quick when it comes to fixing food cost. This kind of goes back into the analytics bucket. So we should be pulling our menu report, our P-mix report. That is a product mix report that comes from our POS system. It's broken down by category, and within the category shows each item and what's sold. We should know our ideal cost or our recipe cost on every one of those items, and by virtue of that, then we can be able to figure out, according to this index, what is a star? What are my items that are most popular, I sell the most of, and they make me the most money, or they're most profitable? When we identify those items, those are great. We want to keep those. They are our rock stars. They are awesome for us. Next, we have more of these plow horses. They're good in the sense that people love them, but they're not profitable. These are the items I want to figure out. Is there something I can do with the ingredients, the portion amount, the entire mix of product, or even the presentation? Can I change some things to deliver on the expectation for people wanting it, but do so in a way that's more profitable? If I were to change the plate, change the presentation, even change some of the ingredients, I can give you a number of examples. We had a Cuban sandwich that fell in this category. Popular, not profitable. We're using 4 ounces of our pulled pork, our Cuban style pork, and we're using 2 ounces of ham. What we did was change the pork to 3 ounces and the ham to 3 ounces, so it was still 6 ounces of protein. We're able to shave the ham, make the sandwich taller. We just ingested an ingredient, but the cost of the proteins, the difference between them, when we flip-flop to 1 ounce, we're able to drive the cost of that item down by 4%. Sell the same price. We cut it a little different, put it on a different plate, and we even kind of renamed the menu item a little bit differently. People still knew it was the same thing, but we made some tweaks, added a different sauce, and the sandwich continued to do well and was more profitable. Next, we have those items that are puzzling to us. We can't understand why they're not more popular. They make us a lot of money, but they don't sell. So a lot of techniques involved in that. Some of that comes down to server awareness. Our front of house staff really being able to describe those items, define those items, and at a minimum get feedback. Have a sample group of people taste it and tell you what they do or don't like about it, why they would or wouldn't order it again, and then try to make those corrections if we can. Then finally, we have our dogs. And these are the items that they're not popular, they're not profitable. But sometimes we make them because we have all the ingredients, or we make them because we think people want them, but the math would tell us otherwise. So we can either re-engineer it, change the ingredients, change the description, change the location on the menu, build promotion around the item, or ultimately we may just need to clear the real estate space that it's taking up on the menu and use that as a blank spot to add some new and creative items that we think will do better, or maybe that we ran for a special that did run better. So that's menu engineering. Now let's get our head around something that's kind of foreign to folks when we talk about food cost. Food costs can be a little bit toxic if we're focusing on the wrong thing. We don't necessarily care about food cost as much as we care about profit. And I'll oftentimes say, people don't have a food cost problem, they have a profit problem. If that's true, then we should really change the lens in which we look at food cost. It's not just about the cost, it's about the profitability. I would like to make more money than I would make a better percentage. And so I'll give you an illustration. I've got an entree salad for $11.99 and it has a 19% food cost. I've got a barbecue chicken for $18.99. It has a 23% food cost. Which one would I rather sell the most of? If your answer was the entree salad because it's got a better food cost, I would show you that I make $9.71 every time I sell this. But every time I sell the barbecue chicken, that's 4 points higher in food cost, I make $5.50 more. I put $5.50 more in the bank. I would rather sell that barbecue chicken plate every single day over the entree salad. So this is balancing that concept of food cost over profit dollars. Percentages versus dollars. We want the dollars. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for the top 10 killers of food cost and how to fix them. I hope you got some good ideas and stuff that you can start applying and impacting right away. I appreciate you hanging out. If you want more information and you want to see more of these videos, remember to subscribe. You'll get alerts every time a new one drops, and we try to make that happen more often than not. Additionally, if you'd like to leave a comment, I try to reply to every single comment, and I love the feedback. Feel free to give us some direction on some other videos that you'd like to see, or even just ask a question about something you'd like clarity on. Finally, if you want to link up professionally, hit me up at LinkedIn, Ronald Bo Bryant, or you can get more information about me, my team, more videos, more training, more big restauranting concepts at bobryant.com. And finally, I can't express again and thank again the tens of thousands of those who've turned into our food cost training videos. I really appreciate the feedback, the interest, and the need for you to improve your craft. That means the world to me. As long as that keeps happening, these videos are going to keep coming. The next video we have scheduled to post is analytics training, how to be able to take food cost information, profit and loss statements, menu engineering, design and development tools to make very, very informed and incredibly impactful and powerful, profitable decisions when it comes to how you manage and operate the food in your restaurant. Thanks a ton for tuning in. See you next time.